Hello and welcome to the Brodie Blueprint, the podcast designed to help college students and young professionals navigate their career paths. Each episode, we sit down with industry experts from finance, business, sports, education, and more to uncover their journeys, daily experiences, and lessons they've learned along the way. Whether you're exploring career options, looking for networking advice, or just curious about different industries, this is the place for you. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hi everybody, welcome back to episode 9 of the Brodie Blueprint. Today I'm joined by a very dear friend of the channel and current marketing intern, Mr. Finn Duraj, everybody. Finn, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you for having me. Really excited to be here, Jack. I've been listening to the other previous 7 episodes. I'm glad I finally got the invite, so I'm happy
Absolutely.
to be here.
You've been wanted for a long time, Finn, so I'm excited to sit and talk to you. Obviously, you are an intern just now, so a lot of young people that watch this, and me, for example, we're all kind of looking for internships, so I'm excited to hear how you're getting on with that. We've set out a little plan. We're going to get started. Obviously, we met at school at Loretto. We briefly talked kind of your plan and your path, and you played rugby in high school and stuff. So tell us a little bit more about that and how you got to uni where you are just now.
Yeah, so I think the important thing is obviously we met at Loretto, but that was for my last 2 years of schooling. So for the first sort of 5 years, I was at the local state school, which is public school. I think for your American audience is just the kind of general sort of crossover. So yeah, I was playing rugby there. Really enjoyed it. At school, at my local high school, I wasn't maybe necessarily the best student. It wasn't that I was misbehaved or anything, and I really wanted to do well in school. I just kind of always struggled, just to get the kind of the grades everyone else was getting, and it's just maybe I always just thought, well, maybe I'm not cut out for academics, or maybe I'm more hands-on, practical. I wasn't very good at that either, so I didn't really know what was going on. But I tried hard, and ended up getting some decent exam results. But kind of my main focus during that time was to play rugby, and actually it was rugby that gave me the opportunity to go to Loretto. So I guess when I was young, probably my one goal was always professional rugby, something I haven't achieved, but that was always the goal. So I was playing in a regional game. So it was Edinburgh versus Glasgow, under 17 level. Just a bounce game. I wasn't expecting anything kind of from it. I was just happy to be in the room and just take the experience. And I was spotted by the head of rugby at Loretto School. I had no idea at the time. I remember getting back in the car and my mum being quite emotional, and I thought, well, that's a bit weird. I didn't think I played that badly. But it's kind of after that she's told me we were approached by a school, like a private school, about if you'd like to come and play rugby for them. And my first thought was, I can't go to a private school. We don't have the kind of facilities for that. And she said, no, it'd be on a scholarship. So it was very, very quick process. I think the game was in the November. I think I was signed up ready to go by the January. So it was amazing thing to happen. And I was very fortunate for the opportunity from there, go to Loretto School, having been in the state school set up for about 5 years. It was a bit of a culture shock. I mean, at the time when I was 16, I thought my life was going to be, I was going to leave school at 16. I was going to get an apprenticeship as an electrician, which was all I wanted to do at the time. I thought that was a great gig. I heard electricians make a lot of money and there's only a small chance you blow yourself up. So it sounded like a pretty good deal to me.
Win-win.
So that for me, that was the plan. And then obviously this opportunity comes up, and I just thought, it's too good to pass up. So if I'm serious about trying to give rugby a crack, this is the best path for me. And academics and university were not on my radar at the time. It was purely go, see how far I can take my rugby. So that was the kind of foundations of me going there. And then once I got to Loretto, I mean, my whole perspective on everything changed. I think the school I was at before, it was very much, if you're really clever, you're one of those kids that are getting, straight A's, yes, you'll go to university. And if you're not, maybe you'll get a trade or apprenticeship, go to college or something. And that seemed fine to me. That made sense. Whereas when I went to Loretto, they were very ambitious in kind of driving the best for their students academically. and having that kind of person to kind of say, no, you are good enough to do this, just push yourself, we'll help you get there. And for me at school, Jack will remember him probably quite fondly, a guy, Jeff Harbison, who was my housemaster, my tutor. I don't think I've ever had the conversation with him, so I hope he hears this one day. But he was absolutely the catalyst for me deciding to kind of bet on myself and really give it a good crack. That university might have been an option. I was very lucky to have that kind of guidance and support, and from there I got accepted to my first choice university, which nobody in my family had actually ever been to university. That was just not something that was an option for a lot of them, and didn't think it was going to be an option for me. And it's that was probably the first time where I really felt really proud of myself, because it wasn't on the cards. I never thought it was possible. Didn't think I was good enough to be there. And then from that, go to university, and then and here we are. I'm now a marketing intern at a company, and a job that I absolutely love, and something I didn't think I was ever. I didn't even know what marketing was like about 4 or 5 years ago, and now right now living the dream. So it's great.
Absolutely. No, I think honestly, Finn, I've been lucky enough to know you a long time now, and I think a lot of the stuff we talk about this is a testament to the character that you have as well. So, don't put yourself down and put this in all of these mentors you had. It's definitely a testament to the work you've done as well. One thing we've heard from a lot of our guests is that they had mentors kind of previously, and I think something that's unique with us two just now is that we're in the process of having mentors as young people. Jeffrey Harbison, Harbo, I've had a similar conversation with him towards our last year of school about, what uni is like, what you can achieve going to uni and stuff. So I relate to that conversation. One thing that always kind of springs to mind with me and your connections to Loretto is your relationship with Binny and your relationship with the rugby staff there. How do you describe the relationship and the impact that those kind of figures had on you?
I mean, I don't think I've really probably thought quite as much get in depth, because I think for me, thinking about kind of that relationship and the impact that Binny, like Mr. White, like Jason White, for people who don't know about rugby, he's one of the greatest players to ever play for Scotland. And just being in the room of like Binny, amazing coach, very experienced, but also just like a relatable guy, somebody like, you finish school, you're like, I could go for a pint with that guy, I could go for a drink with him. Like, it's that sort of thing. So I still see Binny, quite regularly, and, still catch up, and I think the impact he's had on me, I don't think he would ever know the extent, I mean, it totally changed my life, and, and I'm forever indebted to him for that. And especially having Jason there as well, Mr. White. I still feel weird calling him Jason, because he's about 6'5", and I've seen his highlights on YouTube. So anyone watching Jason White rugby, and you'll see why I'm scared to call him his name.
Absolutely.
But yeah, just like being around that, and just that kind of culture of just, like just quiet confidence is what Binny. That was the message we always got. It was quiet confidence, regardless who you're playing. If you're playing top school or bottom school, it doesn't matter. You go, you finish the job, and you don't brag about it. And I just think kind of having that kind of, no matter how good you are, you can always get better. And I just think there's just so many lessons he passed on to me, and just, it's just, he was amazing. And I think if I think too much about it, I probably will get quite emotional about it, because it's hard. It's really hard to put into words. And that's not probably the answer you want, but that is.
No, absolutely. It's really, and a lot of people have said similar things. I think another message that's been reiterated is the impact these people have on you. You might not realize, how vast that was until it's 10, 15 years down the line. So I bet there's a lot more to come from things that you learned from some of those names that you pointed out there. Obviously, I want to get on to what you're doing at uni and your internship. But first of all, a big thing of this podcast is the idea of networking and getting started with networking. I've had a little stalk of your LinkedIn. I know you've got a couple hundred connections. So obviously, you're well into your networking journey. Tell me a little bit about your experience with networking, kind of how getting started with that was.
Well, see, this is a bit of a weird thing. Is that uni wasn't on the radar. I didn't know what marketing was. I didn't know really much about business, other than, that could be interesting. So then, kind of when you start kind of going to university, it's very different to obviously being at school. It's people you don't know, people that are there because they have aspirations to do this exact thing, and they want to excel at that. And for me, that was a bit of a change to, obviously, when you're at school, everyone's there because they have to be there. Whereas university is, you're looking around, and it's, you can view people one way. It's, these can be people I can be friends with, I can have connections with, or these are people that I'll be competing with one day. And I think it's a very unhealthy mindset to go in and look at as if everyone is competition. Like, you have to kind of realize that there are going to be times when that might be true, but also it's kind of the friends you get along the way. I think, again, I don't make this isn't a sport podcast, but I think as well, playing rugby and kind of the people I'd be surrounded by, people, guys I've played with, like our older guys and moved into seniors and stuff. I think it does come quite naturally. I think it's one of the great gifts of sport, just generally, is the connections you get. I think, you walk into a new team and there's 30 guys that you don't know, coaches you don't know. You start to kind of understand, well, how does our relationship work? How do I trust these guys? How do they trust me? How do I interact with them? And I think there's a lot of lessons from that. Like, especially I remember, obviously we'll come a bit more onto it with my marketing internship.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember going and not knowing anybody, or my manager being based overseas. How do I manage that interaction? I'm quite, we're social creatures. I like to think I'm quite a sociable person, so I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I like that kind of interaction. It's quite hard to kind of have with people not face to face. But I think, if you apply some of your real life skills into sort of your virtual meeting,
Your virtual communication.
Yeah, so I think there's certainly there's benefits to both, but one thing I will say is I think especially young people, when you're kind of leaving school, there's not really any kind of like networking literacy. I don't really know how to kind of phrase it. There's no real training.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
How do I do this, or what does this look like? Sometimes it's not the right situation to go up to a CEO of a company and just say, hi, I think you can help me. How can you help me, or how can I help you? It should be transactional. So I think I think context is important. It's hard to kind of get that.
One thing I want to jump in before we move on, because I think you made a good point there, and it's something that I've heard in other episodes as well. The connections between sport and business are really quite similar. Like you just talked about there, I remember coming to America and walking into our soccer locker room, and it struck me as what it's going to be very similar when you walk into your first day at your full-time job. You're walking in, there's maybe 30, 40 people who you've got no idea what they do in their spare time, what they enjoy, what they think of you already. So I think it's testament for that kind of environment, going into that environment, and how you get on with people, how you can socialize with people, and how you can carry that into the workplace as well. Interestingly, network literacy. How do you network? How do you get taught networking? I don't really think it exists, to be honest. Through universities or through high school, I don't really think there's enough stress put on how to network. I always remember, like, personally for me, it's just been total trial and error with messaging people on LinkedIn and messaging connections. So what for you? What do you do to network? What's your kind of interactions been like?
I think for me, it's maybe something I do kind of more subconsciously, or maybe that sort of thing I say to myself is, it's a bit cliche, but the worst thing somebody can say to you is no, or the worst thing they can do is ignore you, and then maybe your pride takes a bit of a hit. But at the end of the day, there's going to be someone else, and you just kind of, I don't know. It's hard to kind of put myself through that thought process. But the worst thing somebody can say to you is no. Or you can, I've messaged people about things, especially when I was applying for internships, things like that. I got a lot of no's before I got that one maybe, and that one maybe became a yes. So I think I we don't read too much into it. And I think one thing as well is people see things online, or all these guys of this is how the best communicators communicate, or this is how to appear as a CEO. I think the one important thing that everybody overlooks is, like, again, it is so cliche, but I think it works, is you just have to be authentic. People see through all the kind of BS, and if you're keeping up an act, you can only keep it up for so long, and people don't value that. I think people see through it, especially people that are maybe more senior in business and stuff. They deal with people like that all day. So I think there is that thing, is just you need to be authentic, and also don't come across like you're trying to establish any sort of superiority over anybody, or like don't try one up yourself. I done this and I've got this experience and I'd be a great fit. It's like, look, I'm just having a conversation with you. If we were at the shops, you wouldn't communicate with me like this.
Any differently.
The fact we're in a business environment should not change. Like, if you're a good communicator, you understand that, and I think that's just kind of the blueprint. I think Brodie Blueprint. Maybe.
Nice, good link there. One thing I want to touch on there as well. I think it's a really good point, and that's not something that anyone else has brought up yet. Obviously, social media, how to communicate, how to network. If you put yourself in the pool of people that are going to be using these skills, the only thing that's going to make you stand out is your personal differences. So why would you want to follow these scripts and follow the blueprints that other people have laid out, when the character that you have might be the thing that gets you a job, or might be the thing that gets your foot in the door? So I think there's definitely something to be said for just being personable and being yourself.
Yeah, I think one thing as well. I think a lot of business owners, recruiters, and like recruitment professionals and people like that. I
Mhm.
think the one thing as well, like a question they probably ask themselves more than maybe people realize is, maybe you could be well overqualified, but it's are they a good culture fit?
Yep.
And that
Yep.
that's a massive thing in sport, especially rugby. You could have all the ability in the world, but if you go to a team where you don't fit that culture,
Mhm.
it's not a nice place to be.
Mhm.
And people, it's hard to kind of gel. Whereas I think if you fit the culture, it makes everything a lot easier. People are more likely to help you. They give you the time of day. So I think it's don't change, like, what I mean, like don't change kind of like your
Don't put on an
personality.
act for no reason.
Yeah, yeah, but equally as well, don't. Sorry, I've totally lost it. I've totally lost it.
That's all
I'm
right.
sure. I'm
No, no,
sure it was a good point. I'm sure I'll come back to it.
Absolutely, and you come back to it, bring it up again, but I completely hear what you're saying. I think, it's the classic American idea of be a locker room guy. Be a locker
Yeah,
room guy
yeah,
before you're kind of the star player or something. So I think,
exactly. Yeah,
and the way I see it, I like to think that people that are hiring people, they want someone more on culture that they can mold and teach the skill than somebody who's purely skill and will never ever fit into that culture. So again, I think there's absolutely a lot to be said for just being yourself and trusting that the right opportunity will come along, the right person will come along.
yeah, and sorry, and just to jump in on that as well, I think
Hmm.
you're saying as well, be that locker room guy, be that person that kind of that people want to kind of help as well. But I also think there is a part of when you go into like a new environment or anything, it shouldn't be a kind of like what can I how do I impose myself on this? It really is just a case of play your part, and then you kind of like get your foot in the door, and then you can kind of they'll just sort of influence that way. I think there is something definitely to be said for, like you say, just be a good fit to the culture. I think that's the best
100%.
thing. Honestly, that's a very good bit of advice.
100%. So you, sir, have been started in your company culture. You're obviously a successful intern just now. Please tell us a little bit more about that, a little bit about, your day to day and your role there.
Yeah, so currently I'm on a 6-month placement at a company based in Edinburgh. They're a software company called the Craneware Group. Essentially, what they are, we sell software. We operate exclusively in the US market. We help hospitals and organizations with their revenue cycle management and value cycle management. We do, yeah, we do a lot of good work. I think. I think we help hospitals kind of make sure every dollar's earned appropriately and
Mhm.
going back into patient care. And I think that's something I get a lot of satisfaction out. I get a lot of satisfaction out of that. It's that thing of indirectly me being a marketing intern. Maybe I'm not having the biggest impact on what they do. Like we have a lot of guys that do all the coding and all the software and the people that kind of make sure this is something that works for people. But
Mhm.
I like to think that my tiny little small part of me maybe putting together a draft for a blog post.
Yeah.
Someone's gonna hopefully someone will see that somewhere, and that will help
Mhm.
them make a decision that will ultimately have that kind of trickle down effect, and somebody's life's going to
100%.
be improved by the care that they receive, and that I get a lot of satisfaction out of that. So far I've not went to work one day where I've not been fully energized to do my small part. And like you said, I've come back to the locker room guys. I know that
Mhm.
if I can do my tiny, tiny, tiny little piece of this whole operation, if I can do this the best that I can, well, that
Yeah.
means somebody else can do the best they can, and then ultimately that's what I'm there to do. So
100%. I think that's a lot of credit to you for that, and also a lot of credit to your bosses and the company itself. I think there's probably a lot of people who've had internships who'd be very jealous of the opportunity that you have, where you feel valued and you feel that you're actually having some value in your job. What do you think? Why do you think that's important for you? Because obviously, I mean, this could be a company either you work for full time after school, or you might never work there again after your internship. But what is it giving you to have this job satisfaction so early on as an intern?
well, I think my managers not only have been, I mean, amazing mentors and giving me amazing guidance. I
Mhm.
just think I think the reason why they do what they do as well is a big part, and there it does kind of trickle down. It's like
Mhm.
leadership sort of starts at the top and kind of trickles down.
Yeah.
Like culture starts at the top and comes down. And I think just what they've exposed me to and their reasons for doing what they do, I think has opened my eyes to, it might seem like, I'm sure there's days where they don't want to be on 10 calls or dealing with just like spreadsheets or just whatever some of the sort of more sort of administrative sort of, let's call it boring, because some of it's boring aspects of the role, but they always have that kind of overarching kind of like, well, the reason I'm doing this is because of, and whatever that is, just having that purpose of whatever drives them is something that is quite inspiring, and you can make it as relevant for you. If my driving thing was, well, if I can do this and I go to work because I want to take some pressure off somebody else in the department, and that'll make their life easier, which means they can do whatever. But I think I'm just very lucky in what the company do, that I can totally see that it's for, in my opinion, it's for the right reasons. Like a few members of my family are nurses, so obviously what I do is, what the company do is connected to that. Obviously that's overseas, but it's that same thing. It's it's do the right thing and help people. I wasn't smart enough to be a doctor, and I'm too chicken-hearted to be a nurse or deal with what these people do. So that and if that just takes a bit of the strain off people that I've never met but do the same job, that gives me a massive amount of satisfaction, and I'm happy to go through as many spreadsheets as they need me to do, because the end result is, it's something that gives me a lot of fulfillment. So
amazing. No, it sounds like a really valuable experience, Finn, and I'm obviously very happy you've been able to have that. I think there really probably isn't many interns that feel like they're having this huge impact on something else. I mean, and even for you, you're based in Edinburgh and you're helping, a company over 3,000 miles away overseas. So I think for you to hold such value as an intern within this company is brilliant, and it's credit to Craneware and credit to your bosses as well. Break down for us a little bit your days in the life, your week in the life. What is the work you're doing as a marketing intern?
I mean, it's not a great response, but it does vary week to week. Sometimes, maybe some weeks it'll be, like I said, maybe drafting a blog post or drafting a presentation for something, or maybe it'll be, can you go away and look at this? Could you do a bit of research on this? Could you make a spreadsheet with a list of whatever it is? So it does vary, but I do like that. I think if I was stuck looking at a screen doing the exact same thing every day, I just don't think that's how. I just don't think I'm just kind of wired that way. For some people, that's the dream job, is know exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to get very good at it, and I'm going to worry about nothing else. Whereas I do really enjoy that sort of bit of variety. It might be on a Monday. Okay, I'd like you to go and look at this. And I'm one of those people that I always think a job half done is one that you shouldn't have started. So I do like thinking. So if sometimes get sent something on the Monday, don't worry, you can send it by Friday. My whole world becomes, this is done for Wednesday, and I'm just going to do what I can do. And I think people do value that. I've had feedback that they do value. It's that kind of like, don't leave it to chance. You never know what's going to happen. And like, not to get too metaphorical, but I just mean things change in business all the time, and I just want to get that back to them as soon as possible. Not because it takes, not just because it's one less thing for me to do, but it's, for me, it's like, well, now I can start the next thing. So so I do like that. I do like kind of pushing myself that way as well. And I think the only way to grow is to push yourself to somewhere where you're not comfortable and take on as much as you can. And if you don't deliver, well, do you know what? It's a mistake. You'll learn from it. You won't do it again. So that's the way.
I think that's also definitely kind of infinitely going to add value to you as an intern, to use a potential employee as well, that they know when you give you this task on a Monday, they're giving you maybe till Friday, but they're probably in the back of their head thinking, Finn's probably going to have this by Wednesday anyway. So I think
it's Tuesday, he's late.
Yeah, exactly. So that's testament to the work that you're obviously putting in and how serious you've taken this internship. And obviously with the good news you got today, you're being kept on. I'm not surprised that this is a company that obviously values the work that you're doing. So congratulations again. Obviously, I want to circle back to some of your advice and things you have to say for young people. But before then, you're still a university student. What's the plan like here? You're a business management student specialising in marketing. When's graduation? What classes you still take it, and what's the rest of uni looking like for you?
Well, because I've been in the internship since January, I finish. Well, I was expected to finish June, but I've been granted an extension, which is good news. So I don't go back to university until September, and that'll be my fourth year. So I think then the layout is, you have a couple of modules, which will be your minors in America. Is that right?
Yeah, I think you're right. Guy loves America.
Yeah. So we go. So I think we do 3 of them plus you have your dissertation, which I'm not sure if you guys have that in America. It's essentially a thesis. It's like a big 10,000 word thing. It's all your own research, it's all your own writing. It's go and find something you're interested in and make it good.
Have you given that a thought yet? Just out of
Um,
curiosity.
I've given it a thought, but you'll just have to wait. You'll just have to wait to see.
No worries. Carry on.
Which is code word for no, not really. I've given it some thought. But I mean, post university, I mean, my plan is it's kind of always been is do your best and something good will come of it. I mean, I've not had a plan so far, and rightly or wrongly, I think things have gone according to plan. But I wouldn't like to. I'm not somebody. I like to have like more short-term goals that I know that if I achieve these, I'm on a good place. I'm in a good place. Sorry. I think planning well in advance for me. Again, my brain just doesn't work that way. I just do the best with what's in front of me, and hopefully, I'll have another opportunity. Or you don't know. You just don't know, Jack. You can try, but you just don't know.
I think you're absolutely right. I think if you can focus on being successful and being hardworking in the short term, I feel like you're almost guaranteed to land on your feet somewhere in the long term. So I think that's probably a very similar situation to what you're going to be in, where you're obviously been very successful with this internship. You've got a year of school to get through, and then you could almost guarantee that you're going to land on your feet somewhere after that. So I think having short-term goals can be important. Obviously, a lot of people, like you said, just aren't wired that way and might have their whole next 10 years planned out, but not sure what they're doing next week. So I think obviously everyone's different. But knowing you, Finn, I've got no doubt you'll land on your feet somewhere in the next couple of years. So again, that's also very exciting for you. Just to be time conscious, we're going to get on to what kind of advice you and I have got for our generation and other tips. Obviously, networking, being in a company as an intern, as a young person, what would you suggest to other people who are looking for these opportunities and trying to figure out their career?
Do you know what? I thought a great deal of this. So a couple of months ago, I kind of realized I was just head on, like I was so focused on my work. Me and the other intern that I'm with is actually a really good friend from uni, so it's worked out great. So we've been working together. It's been great. Him and I sort of like looked at each other, looked at the date, and went, we've been here 3 months. We're actually halfway through, and it went by in such a flash, and it kind of got us both thinking, and we thought, kind of what are the well, it's just exactly that. What advice would we give ourselves 3 months ago? And I think kind of what I settled on was the sort of the 3 things that, just from my experience in my work life and also my academics and my sort of sporting life as well, the 3 things I sort of came up with is the first one is be authentic. We've talked about that. You just, people see through BS. They're not got any interest, and the rule will run out eventually. Like people will find people aren't stupid. They'll figure it out.
100%.
I think the second one as well, one of the most important ones for me was, just kind of have the courage to fail. Like I said, the worst thing you can do is go in at your shell and just go, I don't want to do this in case it's wrong or whatever. And from like feedback I've had from like people I've interacted with professionally, like outsiders, like I said, the worst thing you can be is wrong, and the worst thing somebody can say is no.
Yeah.
If you make a mistake one time, well, they're going to tell you why, and it's more fool you if you do it again. But you just have to have that courage to say, like, what, this is what I think's right. This is the best I can do. And what, if my best right now isn't good enough, well, I'm an intern. I'm not applying for. I'm not going to be a C-suite executive straight away.
Yeah.
It's that thing, and I'm sure they all. I think probably maybe the one thing I've noticed from people that I've interacted with that are in senior roles is they all are very good with people like ourselves that are young and aspiring. It's because they go, well, do you know what? I'm going to try and be the person that I wish I had when I was that age. And I think that's a massive thing is, it's just have that courage to be wrong, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It does not. No. It does not matter. The only time it matters is if you know you're wrong and you do it. Somebody tells you how to fix it and you don't fix it, and then you don't fix it, and then you don't fix it, and then you get in that cycle and you just have to totally reevaluate. But I think just having the courage to take the first step to just, this is what I can do, and people believe it or not, people want to help you. People, not everyone's out to get you. They're not going to get sacked over. They get sacked over a spell mistake. Just try. And I think probably the 100%. Last thing as well, I think, so this is maybe something from my maybe kind of sporting experience, is to try and raise your floor. not your ceiling. I think that's kind of like the big thing is, it's raise your standards, and keep your standards. It's like there's no point setting a limit to it. It sounds very cliche. I'm sorry, it's very wishy-washy. There's no point setting limits for yourself. It's, if you can raise your floor, and these are your standards, instead of saying, oh, I want to go and do this, this, and this. If you just keep raising this gradually, you'll get to where you want to go to. You'll get to your goals, and you need to hold yourself accountable to your own standards. Doesn't matter what anybody else is doing or what anybody else's standards are. They're personal, and if you can honestly look at yourself and say, I'm performing to a standard that I've set myself, trust me, it's a lot more of a nicer conversation than I've got so far to go. It's because you've been focusing on the wrong thing. Focus where you are now.
That kind of reminds me of the saying, like, those who enjoy the journey will go further than those who look to the destination type of deal. If you enjoy the work and enjoy doing the work, you're going to go so much further than the original expectations you had.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think it's quite, as I've found as well, the internship, it has been quite like cathartic. Like, you do get a lot more out of that kind of the journey, the kind of the grind. Like, there's a lot of days, like anything. It's like, some days I don't want to drive in Edinburgh traffic and take an hour to get to the office. I could just work from home. But I know if I work from home, I'm not going to do the work I need to do, or I'm not going to be on this call because I can't be bothered. It's like, no, it's my standard I've set for myself is every day I'm going to try my absolute best, and if my best isn't good enough, well, we'll reevaluate and we'll go again tomorrow. That's just what you have to be. And I think you're absolutely right. You do get a lot more out of the process. If I think back 5 years, if I told myself I'm going to have done what I've done professionally, academically, sporting, where I am now, I'd have just been like, no way. You don't see how that lines up. So like, no, you're absolutely right. It's just, enjoy it while you're on it, because you don't know when your destination's coming. So
100%. And again, obviously, just to reiterate, it was something you spoke a lot about, Finn, that failure is something that I've learned from this podcast. Turns out it's not actually the worst thing in the world. We've sat down with CEOs of companies who said, they've had to sit down with their team and admit that they failed and admit that they just weren't ready for the role they were given. So I think if you can understand that early on, it sets you in a much better position than being terrified of failing for your whole career and stuff. And again, I want to touch on what you said about having your own standards. I think as well, that guarantees that you're going to feel so much more valuable in whatever role you go into, because you're holding yourself accountable more than anyone else has to as well.
Exactly. Well, there's no progression from, if somebody sets you a task and they expect this of you, well, maybe the right thing for you is I'm just going to exceed expectations. There's that old sort of trope that's, under promise, over deliver. Okay, well, that's fine, but if the standard that's being set is below the one you set yourself, well, that's how you stagnate. You just do what's needed, and you just don't move anywhere.
There's no growth.
If you take on something that's maybe too challenging for you, and it turns out it's too challenging, well, at least you know where you sit, and then the next time you can reevaluate and just keep going that way. There is no point in not setting yourself a steady standard. If you say, oh, I want to work my way all the way up, I think anybody that would have started as started on the sort of the bottom rung of the ladder, I don't think anybody would have had that thought. And the ones that have been successful, I don't think any of them ever had the thought of becoming, the top guy in the company. I listened to your podcast with Eric, and I thought that was great. He started I think he said he started working in a sort of supermarket, sort of warehouse.
Like an Office Depot, he's stacking shelves.
An Office Depot. Yeah, and it was not on his plans to become, the sales, a sales manager for Skull Candy. By the way, I remember seeing you got him as a guest on the podcast, and I seen Skull Candy, and I was like, I used to have Skull Candy headphones, because I didn't have Beats headphones.
And actually, it's good. It's funny you bring that up, because Eric's story, he worked with Office Depot for 11 years, said that he just grew steadily there. And like you said, obviously, that guy's now been a senior director, a vice president of sales all over. So I think that's the perfect example of exactly what you're saying. The guy just set out steady expectations and just kept growing steadily.
Well, that's exactly that. I remember listening to that podcast, and I remember thinking, like, I think he's totally right. He's totally got it right. That I think if he set out to say, I'm going to be the vice president of sales for this massive company while he's working at Office Depot, you just think like, well, it's great to have dreams, but how are you going to do it? I'm sure Eric was, if I can do this, I can go here, and then I can do the store layout, and then I can do all, X, Y, and Z. And it was
interesting. Not to interrupt you, but I think if you do it like that, then you teach yourself that you're capable of doing all these different roles. Instead of aiming for, I want to go from being an intern to being the CFO, it's like, no, I can be an intern, I can be the step up from that, I can be the step up from that. And I think it kind of, again, it adds value to yourself from a personal perspective as well.
I think so. I think there was a lot of lessons I took from that, and it was nice to see that, because obviously you only know what you know, you don't know what you don't know. And I think it was always kind of like, I maybe had that, well, I can see how this works. I don't know if that applies to the real world, but I think hearing Eric talk about that, I thought like, okay, well, that's good that it's not just me. So either we're both wrong, and we'll both like, I'm sure we could talk about it sometime, but it was good to know that somebody who's been successful also shares that sort of thought process, where I might think, okay, maybe I just totally haven't got this, like haven't made this up. That's it was good to hear. It was a very, very good listen. I really enjoyed it.
100%. I appreciate it. It's good marketing as well. Thank you so much. Finn, look, thank you so much for coming on, mate. It's been brilliant hearing your insight, especially from a young person. It's been great to hear what you've been up to and the kind of advice you have, mate.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully I haven't bored everyone. Hopefully everyone understand me with my accent as well. So
absolutely, I think we'll definitely try and get you back on over the next year, learn more about your internship and learn more about what you've got up to. But everybody, we'll have new episodes every Wednesday, Sunday. Look for updates. The Brodie Blueprint on Instagram and TikTok, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Well, that's all for today, folks. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and were also able to gain some valuable insight into a potential career. Please head over to Instagram and TikTok and follow us. That's the Brodie Blueprint. And also don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube as well. If you guys have any guests that you want to see on the podcast, or any industries that you want to see guests appear from, please let us know. Until next time, guys. See you later.